Hi, I'm JD, and I'm just going to discuss assignment 2 from COMP348 a little bit, and what the process was like for me and what I ended up making here. So basically for this assignment we had to create an HTTP server. I thought it was pretty neat to be able to make an HTTP server. I'm a web developer and I work with HTTP servers a lot, but never really imagined I'd ever make one. So it was kind of cool to see how easily you can do that, at least given the templates provided in the textbook. So in front of me here, I've got some code that basically my assignment submission. So not terribly challenging to do this one. I was able to take the example from the textbook. There's a little bit later on in chapter 9, there's actually another example of a more full-fledged server that can take multiple files. So essentially, to do this, I had to take the command line parameters and modify that, so instead of specifying a single file, now we're specifying like a path that becomes the document root for the web server. So once that's out of the way, you have to write a little code to handle the GET request. So that should happen in here. You're reading the request, splitting it into its parts. I'm just splitting it on the space. So the first word will usually get. Any subsequent words will have the next word between the next spaces will be the actual file that's requested. So I had to do a little finagling to get figure out the path on my computer when somebody makes a GET request. So anyways, I'm going to do a quick little demo of how that looks. First thing, if we run it, Java multi-file HTTP server, we see we get some error messaging happening that will help the user figure out how they're supposed to run this. So in order for this to work, we'll specify the root folder as the current path, and the port will be, let's use 8181. If I use port 80, that won't really work. I do have an error message indicating that it does use that as a default, but usually you probably have to run a port like that as root, or there might be another server already running on the computer. All right, so at this point we have that server going. So I'm going to start another little window here and then another command line window. We can telnet to localhost port 8181, which is the port we set this up on. And we see here, if we run GET request, well, it crashes. So obviously I'm not handling that scenario very well. Let's try that again. Do our GET request, get slash. That works better. So clearly I could do some work on my error handling for malformed requests and that sort of thing, but you see here it returns my very simple web pages. If I just look up inside that particular folder, I'm just going to stop this guy and see what's in there. So I have a few files here. Just some very simple HTML files. So this is like the home page, and here's like another simple file, and you can also see there's a little PNG file. So let's start this up again. And in this case, I'm going to open a little browser window and make it a reasonable size. Here we go. So if I go to localhost 8181, there's our web page. You can see it functioning. You can go to links. Another fun thing here, so it's loading the images. I didn't have to do anything special really to handle that. I do have to return the right header at some point. And here's a 404 page, so an example of something that doesn't exist and returning a 404 page. If you use the nice little inspector, you can also go to the network tab and run these requests, and you can also see that I'm returning the inappropriate header. So here's the actual GET request the browser sends. That's pretty important to be able to see. And here's the response. So here are the actual headers that are being returned. We go back to this guy. You can see here again our headers. So these are actually generated by that Java code, which should happen. I have a little function that creates the header. So this is what actually generates, this is the code that actually generates that. It's kind of neat. Yeah, so the second version of this for part 2, almost the same, except I added a little bit of extra code that does logs. So in this case, I'm just kind of manually writing a file, creating a file, appending to it. And that code happens up here, this write log function. So I just accept the things that are going to be variable. So the bytes, the response code, like 404 if it's not found, or 200 if it's a normal working request. And the most complicated thing here for me was to get the time format correct, and also the time zone offset. I couldn't seem to find just a nice, easy format string that did what I needed, so I had to do a bunch of crappy string manipulation. So that's the part I didn't like, but once it's all said and done, let's fire that up and demonstrate it. Okay, so we should be able to compile our logging, Java C logging multi-file server. Compiled, and we run that guy, pretty much the same as we did before. Looks like it's working. And again, we try our request, something like get slash. Should do that. Actually, in the way I did this, if you don't return an HTTP version, it doesn't send a header back, but I do believe it still logs regardless. So if we go and look, we see now there's an access log, cat, and there is, so that's localhost and IP version 6 and the current time, and the actual request that was sent, the error code, the bytes returned. So one of the requirements of this assignment is that you can use the results from assignment 1, the code from assignment 1, to actually parse this log and make sure it works. So one problem I had is I was doing something kind of dumb, returning the /r and /n. I was trying to use the Windows line endings, and I got the carriage return and line feed characters backwards, and that broke this whole thing. So if that's happening to you, that could very well be what's going on. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful or interesting to you if you have to do this assignment. And yeah, all in all, I had kind of had fun with this and found it to be pretty interesting to be able to make my own simple web server.